What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Only Football. Down here in downtown Miami, ready for the Miami Dolphins to take on the Denver Broncos, the 2-0 Miami Dolphins, for that matter. It's been interesting because you get your week ones where the teams that you know what they are come out and produce. We knew the 49ers would be good, the Eagles. But then you have teams like Tampa Bay get a win week one on the road in Minnesota. People expected the Vikings to be bad. So you look at that game and you go, is Tampa Bay better than expected, or is Minnesota what we thought they were? What if Minnesota is actually what they were last year? Then Tampa would be better. So then you get week two and Tampa wins at home. So you get a better idea of who people are by week two. And there was a lot of things that we learned week two. Detroit played a close game against Seattle like they do most times they play. The last couple times it's been a close game. The Giants able to come back and win a game that was getting really, really ugly on the road in Arizona. That's a far travel going all the way to Arizona for a Giants team. So I don't look into that too much. They came back and they got the win. But how much can they clean things up with the toughest game maybe on their schedule, flying all the way back? Or apparently they stayed in the West Coast. They stayed in Arizona because they're playing the 49ers tomorrow night. So the Giants elect not to fly back to New York. Instead, they get ready. So how is that going to affect the Giants? They have a lot of obstacles and a lot of reasons why maybe they would lose this game. So if they can come out there and with all of the factors and things going against them, still get a win on the road, that is a season-defining win, in my opinion. At that point in the season, you're going 1-1, 2-1, way better than 1-2. So I'm excited to see this game tomorrow night. I expect McCaffrey to have a big game. The 49ers to continue rolling. This might be easily the best team in the NFL. There's a couple other teams I feel pretty strongly about, including the Miami Dolphins, which is no surprise to anybody that's been watching this podcast. Dallas continues to win. They're likely to go to 3-0 playing the Arizona Cardinals. But Arizona did play, tough against the Giants. But Dallas's defense is a whole nother thing. And then Philadelphia playing Tampa Bay. We talked about Tampa Bay. Well, now this is kind of the test for Tampa Bay, okay? They get to be at home. The crowd's going to be behind them. They're an underdog type of team. No one expected Tampa Bay to be 2-0 at this point in the season. Now, how are they going to respond to Philly, who is also 2-0, but they are, some are saying maybe it's just not the same team. Last week on Thursday, they had to turn to the running game to win, in which DeAndre Swift actually became the player of the week, over 170 scrimmage yards, a touchdown. He went absolutely berserk, but now Kenneth Gainwell's coming back. I'm excited to see if Philly is going to lean on DeAndre Swift after that performance, or if Kenneth Gainwell is going to get back into the action and it's going to go like that. So those are some of the questions I have. As you can see by the ticker going on underneath us, there's some news. Terrible injury for Nick Chubb on Monday night. Terrible, terrible injury. You really do hate to see somebody of his caliber go down, okay? Not only that, but the type of injury he had, it really sucks. And they were going to lean on Nick Chubb heavier than any other season because Kareem Hunt was released. Well, ironically, the Cleveland Browns reached out and signed Kareem Hunt to a deal. All right, so I wanted to talk about this deal a little bit here and what does that mean for the Browns in their running game. We know that this is one of the best offensive lines in the league. Kareem Hunt is back home. Okay, so the running back's returning to Cleveland on a one-year deal worth up to $4 million. Ian Rappaport reported today. The team officially announced the signing. Hunt's addition comes on the heels of Nick Chubb's season-ending knee injury suffered in Monday night's loss to the Steelers. A product of nearby Wilby High School in Ohio, Hunt spent the entire 2023 offseason waiting out the market for an opportunity to play a significant role somewhere in the NFL. So we know that this happens all the time. There's very good players that don't get signed and they just kind of wait for somebody to get injured, somebody to go down, and they're on the top of the list. Kareem Hunt happened, to be on top of the list that his former team put him on. So this is kind of like a home family reunion for Kareem Hunt. I expect him to come right in and understand the offense really well. Some of the challenges that another running back may have going into a new system, a new city, a new locker room, just a lot of new. Sometimes it takes time for it to get going. Dalvin Cook, great example, right? This I expect to just roll right away. Kareem Hunt in Cleveland. So I already tried to pick him up on my fantasy team, and I was successful at it. I'm not even sure how, considering this news came out at 10:54 a.m. and I didn't, hear about it until 5. But I guess maybe that is, good in regards to my team. I mean, nobody, I guess, saw the news. Thank God. So if you're watching this right now, you might get lucky too. I mean, Kareem Hunt was available as a free agent because nobody, had him even on the roster. Now, the people that probably stashed Kareem Hunt in case a team signed him, those are probably 12-man leagues. And in that case, he's probably not available. But if you play with a bunch of idiots like I do, go ahead and scoop up Kareem Hunt. All right. Another disappointment, I got to say, the Chicago Bears, right? And we talked about what it was going to be like when Rodgers went to New York and how, look, Chicago's kind of been, on the bottom during the Brett Favre and the Aaron Rodgers era. It's been a completely dominant series. A lot of people didn't know how good Jordan Love was. Kirk Cousins, you know who he is. He's better than average, but he's less than elite. And then you have Jared Goff, who I think may be a little bit better than Kirk Cousins, and that's debatable. But Aaron Rodgers, leaving that division, a lot of people in Chicago felt like Justin Fields and the Bears have an opportunity to have the best quarterback in the NFC North. Now, think about this. You have to go back, I believe it was like 1969, to find, it was either 1969 or it was even crazier. I believe it was never. And here's the stat. The Chicago Bears have never had a quarterback throw for 4,000 yards. Not Rex Grossman, even in the Super Bowl push against the Colts in 2009, I believe. Jay Cutler, who had Brandon Marshall, and I was surprised to see Jay Cutler never had a four. There has never been a quarterback in Chicago that you're like, that dude was a dog. Like, that was our Aaron Rodgers. They never had that. Justin Fields was supposed to take this step, and it's probably really, really, really hard to watch to see Justin Fields start 0-2, and the Packers kind of have something with Jordan Love, and there's some life there, right? So all of these things said, right, everybody was pretty much saying the same thing. Justin Fields being sacked 50 times last season was a huge problem. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields were sacked 50 and 51 times, most in the NFL. So the criticism was that Justin Fields, he was dancing, he was feeling imaginary pressure, he wasn't settling down and going through his progressions. And a lot of Bears fans were like, yeah, no shit. He was getting sacked so many times, obviously at a certain amount of sacks, you start just believing if you don't get rid of the ball really quick, there's another one coming from right behind, right? So it does make you more antsy and things of that nature. But the big question was if Justin Fields, with an improved offensive line with Broderick Jones, I believe, on the offensive line. The guy out of Tennessee. I think they got the Wright, Wright. He had a better offensive line, and therefore people were like, this is his time to improve as a pocket quarterback. Okay. So Justin Fields going through, week 1 and week 2, he has been trying to show, I think, the world that not only is he a running quarterback, but to be a true dual threat means not that you're good at running the ball. It means that you can throw the ball. And he wanted to be considered a thrower of the football. And I think after what Justin Fields said, because he made some comments that were taken out of context by the media, and they made it seem like he was throwing his coaches under the bus for the type of coaching. But he clarified all of those statements today. And from what I gather, Justin Fields is basically saying, look, I know that you guys want to see me throw the football. I know you want to see the progression, but we're 0-2 and we need to get a dub. And if that means I got to go out and take over the game with just raw instincts and being, just a good football player, I'm going to do it like that. Okay, so here's the exact situation right now, and then we'll talk about the Bears defense in a minute here. Here we go. Fields clarifies robotic comments, okay? So Justin Fields' Wednesday comments regarding his coaches raised an eyebrow or two in the football world. And now here's what he said regarding the media trying to do it for attention. You guys' job is to get clicks. So it's like, you take my quote out of context and we can just say that. Field said, if you paint the picture on the inside out, y'all are trying to split us up. I'm not blaming anything on the coaches. I'm never going to blame anything on the coaches. I'm never going to blame anything on my teammates. Whatever happens in the game, I will take the blame. I don't care if it's a drop pass. It should have been a better pass. Put it on me. Never when you hear anything come out of my mouth to where I will blame it on someone else in this organization, my teammates, never will you hear that. And I just want to clear that up. So Justin Fields stepping into that leader role. Something similar kind of happened last year with Zach Wilson, but in the opposite way, where they asked him, do you take responsibility, in the loss? And he said no. And then Saleh benched him the next week. This is a young quarterback taking a different approach and acting like the leader. And what Justin's is trying to say is, I don't care if I throw the ball to a receiver and he drops the game-winning touchdown. On the podium, on the spotlight, you will never hear me throw my players under the bus. It's not that those players won't be responsible for a loss. It's that Justin Fields is never going to shit on his teammates. And I think he's just trying to set an overall tone for how these press conferences are going to go. So then he continues and says, my goal this week is to say F it and go out there and play football how I know how to play football. That includes thinking less and going out there and playing off of instincts rather than say so much info in my head and data into my head. I'm just going to go out there and play football. That's when I play my best out there, playing free and being myself. Everything Justin Fields is explaining right here is noise that came from the outside saying that he can't be a pocket passer. So what is he referring to when he goes, I need to play off my instincts and stop thinking? I need to think less, go out there and play off of instincts. And rather than to say so much info and data in my head, he's talking about anxiety, whether you believe it or not. Justin Fields is saying, look, we can work on the, all that other stuff, developing as a pocket quarterback. We can do that later, but at least for this week, I got to go back to just playing free and using my instincts and trust that when I use my instincts, that everything that I learned from whatever kind of pocket awareness training or read, whatever's going to happen situationally in the game, that it'll come out naturally if he's comfortable, if he's playing off instincts. So if you have Justin Fields in your fantasy league, you know that the last 2 weeks have not been a reflection, an accurate reflection of what Justin Fields was able to do last year. Clearly, there's something that had changed with Justin Fields. So I'm just glad that we can diagnose it at this point and look at this and be like, okay, Justin's basically telling us what has been going on this whole time. And then he continued, said, then when I play my best is when I'm out there playing free and being myself. So I'm going to say kind of bump all of what I should, this and that, like pocket stuff. I'm just going to go out there and be me. Right here. I didn't even remember he said this, like pocket stuff. This channel included, we talked about Justin Fields' ability to improve as a pocket quarterback. Justin Fields is clearly soaking up, whatever national media is saying. It's like, where does this come from if you're not, watching the media on Twitter, reading the comments? I mean, this is kind of the problem with the younger generation, is that they're so attached to social media that when they get drafted, you pay more attention to it. You look at your mentions, you look at, we just heard about death threats over Twitter because of the hit on Travis Hunter for Colorado. And Deion Sanders had to go on the podium and go, I don't condone any death threats. Like, this is an insane time we're living in with the social media and stuff. For a young guy, it can be overwhelming. I think what Justin Fields is going to do, he's going to turn off the noise, turn off the TV, log out of the socials, go out there and just get in the zone and remember what it was like playing football when he didn't have the weight of the world on his shoulders, and go out there lighter and try to, just play better that way. Still, a second media session, just to clarify, his comments isn't a great sign about how things are kicking off so far for Chicago, but taking an adversarial approach with the media before October doesn't suggest that brighter days are around the corner. I tend to disagree with the way the author has painted this picture. I think Justin Fields does have a bounce back game this week. If he does go back to his instincts. Now, this could be a huge game for Justin Fields. This could be one of those games where he learns something about himself, right? If he's like, hey, I'm just going to go back to playing football free, and he goes out there, goes into Kansas City and beats the Chiefs, right? Now you're 1-2, and you just beat the Super Bowl defending champions on the road. That's the type of win that's worth like 5 wins, because now your team believes that they can beat anybody on any Sunday as long as Justin Fields is comfortable and he gets out of his head. Okay. However, the flip side of this is it's Kansas City, it's on the road, and Chicago could very easily be 0-3 after Sunday. So this is a huge game, not even just for Justin Fields, but the Bears in general, to really ask themselves, who are we going to be this year? What is our place going to be in the NFC North? Okay. And I think by 4:25 on Sunday Eastern time, we'll have the answer to that. So going through some more news, the Raiders have placed Chandler Jones on the non-football illness list. We're going to talk about that after we hit this comment. We got Robert Burton in the chat. He said this should be an exciting weekend for Chicago based on how he says he's going to play this weekend. Give a thumbs up, help the algorithm. Thank you, Robert. And yeah, I was trying to get the buildings in the back. We're in downtown Miami, getting ready for the Miami Dolphins Broncos game. So my brother's actually living down here, so we're in his condo. Glad to have you guys in here. So about this non-football injury list, okay. This is not been the greatest kickoff since he was acquired by the Raiders. Okay. We had this thing where it was Max Crosby and Chandler Jones are going to be going crazy on opposite sides of each other. He was out a lot last year, and I want to see if there's any information on what exactly he's going to be out for. It's non-football related. It may be something going on with family, something outside of football. Here is what an article says right here. Throughout McDaniels has referred to Jones' situation as personal and private and would not comment, even as Jones' posts became more frequent and accusatory, claiming at one point that a family friend's daughter was being abused and the team knew of it. Over the weekend, Jones claimed that his account had been hacked. Wow, there's a lot going on right now. Again, there's nothing McDaniel said I can do about it at this point. So we're just respecting the process and understand the situation. And that's really all I can say about it. And no doubt Chandler Jones is a force of nature when he's on the field. But it's whatever's going on, it doesn't seem great. If it's something that's going on like personal to him, I hope that they're able to get through it so he can be back out on the football field doing what he loves. A really quick roundup, really quick for some of these games that we had. Obviously, the Denver Broncos taking the loss at home to the Washington Commanders. And I did want to touch on this because it's really important that you take the emotion out of the win or the loss. A lot of people get too high when they win, they get too low when they lose. And when you lose your season opening game, and you do that only scoring 16 points, it's going to make it really hard for you to be optimistic moving forward, right? That's about the worst thing that could have happened to us. I mean, literally the worst thing that could have happened to us. I mean, the fact that that really happened was embarrassing, right? Very embarrassing. And then you go into week 2, okay? And now we're going to talk about what actually happened. First off, Russell Wilson absolutely looked better in the first half. He was throwing the deep ball. I mean, I was literally in shock. There was a touchdown that went deep to Marvin Mims, the rookie out of Oklahoma, and you could see on the fan's face, right? I know what it's like to celebrate a touchdown. It was more than celebrating a touchdown. That was the play that people had been waiting 20 games for, 20 football games, waiting for one play that they could say, you know what? Russ is back. That's what happened in the first half. Denver takes an 18-point lead over the Commanders, and then the defense does its job. The Commanders punt it to Denver, and I'm thinking to myself, holy crap, we're about to take a 25-point lead because it's about to be a 28-3. And Russell Wilson gets out of the pocket. He runs. He gets tackled. He fumbles the football. The Commanders pick it up, and I swear I looked at everybody that was around me at the time, and I said, that's it. Right when Washington recovered the fumble, I've seen this movie before. I know exactly all the words to this song. Denver, they can come out and do an amazing job. They can start fast. But as soon as any adversity comes up, it's almost like there's a spell on the team where they can't win when there's any adversity. If you leave a door open, I mean, the tiniest door, if you leave that door open, Denver will let their opponents come rushing through it. Okay. And that's what happened when they fumbled the ball. It was a huge turning point in the game. The defense looked really bad. I know that Washington's got a really good defensive front. Montez Sweat, Chase Young, Payne, those guys were in the backfield at the snap. And this was a week after Denver had, 3 guys ranked in like the top 10 on their offensive line. McGlinchey had an amazing game. Mirnez had an amazing game, and Garrett Bowles had an amazing game. This maybe had the potential to be a top 15 unit. Max Crosby didn't get a single sack. I think he only had 1 pressure week 1. Speaking of Max Crosby, right? So I went into this game, and for the first half, the offensive line was holding it down. Russ was throwing the deep ball. He had 2 completions that were over 50 yards. Marvin Mims, I think, was on the receiving end of both of them. And things just looked a lot better. And then the second they fumbled that ball, Washington ran through that tiny cracked window and won the game, right? And the fact is, when Denver had that Hail Mary at the end of the game that was completed, I would be lying if I said I didn't shit my pants, because I did. but I also knew they weren't going to convert. I hate to say it, but at that point in the game, I had seen enough from this offense, and that offensive line looked completely destroyed and wore out from that defensive line. I was like, there's not going to be enough time. Well, they run the play. It was actually a good play. He did have time. He threw the ball, and it was clear PI. I mean, it was bad. Cortland Sutton was giving a piggyback ride. I believe that was the rookie out of Mississippi State, Emmanuel Forbes, giving him a piggyback ride, and then the flag doesn't come out. Now, even just NFL Twitter in general, as soon as that game ended, I saw thousands of people, not even a Broncos fan, but that was complete bullshit. And now here's the thing. You can't challenge it. They're not going to do a booth review of it. The game just ends like that. And to me, what I think should happen, I know that they tried to do you should challenge pass interference. I think that was being used too much and it was wasting too much time. But I think what they could do is in critical situations, and you might ask, how do you define a critical situation? Well, under 2 minutes, or in overtime. If there is a play that looks like it was close enough to be pass interference, I would like to see the booth review it. The whole play that happened with the New Orleans Saints and the PI against the Vikings, and the Vikings ended up winning after clearly pass interference was called. That was the game that the next year the NFL said, okay, we're going to allow you to challenge. Well, if this rule that I'm asking for would have been allowed, the booth would have reviewed the PI in that Saints game because it was at the very end of the game. So this is something that I think we need to look at. But I mean, it just sucks to lose a game. But you know what? As much as people were like, oh man, I'd be so mad if I was Denver. I'm like, no, we don't deserve to win a game that we were winning by 18 points against the Commanders and they were on the road, right? It shouldn't have ever came down to that. It shouldn't had to have come down to a 2-point conversion. And that would have only sent it into overtime. So to think that we were like, robbed, yeah, there was a missed call and it probably would have went to overtime. But the fact that we're even in that situation is absolutely pathetic. So when I look at Sunday's matchup against the Miami Dolphins, I'm really excited about it. Why? Okay, because you might be thinking, dude, if I were you, I would want a tune-up game. I would want to play the Raiders or the Commanders. Yeah, well, we tried that already, and it's not working. So let's try something different. Let's see if we can play up to our level of competition, right? Miami, it's a tough environment. This is the first road game. Okay, the expectations right now, they're very low. Now, I thought Denver would be a 10-point underdog on the road. It's at 8.5 right now. I think Miami the only reason I can't just be like, I think Miami's going to win is because I just don't believe Sean Payton is going to go 0-3, right? I think Miami's one of the best teams in the league. I really do. But to think Sean Payton's going to roll over, if you want to get everyone to buy in, especially the fan base, you drop your first 2 games at home as our new coach, a brand new coaching regime, and then you hear Sean Payton's comments after the game about we need to lessen the terminology. Our plays are too wordy. If we got to do a wristband, we'll do that. And you remember last year when the wristband stuff came out and Geno Smith was wearing a wristband and Russ was like, I didn't wear a wristband or I didn't need a wristband when I won a Super Bowl. It turned out to be this whole thing. Well, here we are after week 2, and we're seeing some of the very similar problems. Denver's not getting to the line fast enough. The delay game penalty, they can't even get set. So Sean Payton comes out and goes, if we got to wear a wristband, he's going to wear a wristband. It wasn't like when Nathaniel Hackett, was here and it's like, well, Russ is in charge. Sean is going to, I would be shocked if Russell Wilson's not wearing a wristband on Sunday because Sean has an opportunity, whether you like it or not. Every time Denver loses, it's a golden opportunity to have a ton of things to correct. And that's what makes Sean Payton a great coach. Week 1 to week 2, the offense looked very much better. I mean, Russell Wilson threw for 3 touchdowns. Denver right now averages the most points per possession. So to say that they're having offensive problems, that's not true. To think, oh, what's the difference between Sean Payton? A lot. Now, you might say, well, they only scored 16 points. Denver only had 6 or 7 possessions the whole Raiders game because the defense couldn't get off the field. Denver is scoring on most of their possessions. They are just not getting 3 and outs, right? And that's showing up in that way. That's why, I mean, it's a team sport. Defense gets off the field really fast. All of a sudden, the offense gets, maybe 10 more opportunities to go down and put points on the board. It's very simple. So really right now, Denver has a very big problem, and it's on the defensive side of the ball. They're not tackling. They're not, Damari Mathis is getting beat a lot. Vance Joseph, our former head coach before Vic Fangio, a defensive guy, right? We had to fire him. He goes to Arizona to be the defensive coordinator. Well, Sean Payton hires a former head coach to be a defensive coordinator. And this defense looks very, very, glaring different than last year, right? Ajiro Evero, he was our defense coordinator last year. I believe he came from the Rams. Okay. He's out. Vance Joseph comes in, and this defense looks different. Okay. Now, I'm pretty sure Sean Payton is kind of putting Vance Joseph on the – everybody's on the hot seat right now, right? At the same time, I don't think there's a panic button being hit. But Sean's thing is, look, if you guys can't correct these things defensively, then it's either coaching or the players have a ceiling of talent, right? They're either not talented enough to be starting on defense, or their coaching is sucking, okay? But it's very simple, because if Sean Payton can watch enough film and go, no, the defense has the talent, which I will remind you that Rex Ryan this week said when he was interviewed for the defensive coordinator job that Denver had the talent to be the number 1 defense in the NFL. That's what Rex Ryan said about this defense. And they were holding teams to 16 points all of last year, besides like 2 games. Okay. This was one of the best, stingiest defenses in the NFL. So if Sean is watching the film and he comes to the understanding or has the epiphany that, holy crap, this team does have the talent, then what is he going to do with the coaching? Is Vance Joseph going to get fired? Would they make a change at defensive coordinator? I don't know, but I do know I am not used to. It's been a while since I've seen our defense just get beat out, physicaled, right? The physicality of the defense is just not there. There's only one player that we have that's a true dog that'll just come up and pop you, and he got ejected. And that was Kareem Jackson for his hit on I believe that was Terry McLaurin, or I think it was the tight end. So Denver's going to have a huge test, just like Chicago, right? 2 teams that are 0-2, both playing top teams in the AFC. I would say the Kansas City one may be more winnable because Kansas City, they didn't look great in Jacksonville and they lost to the Lions. But, they're going to be a tough team week in and week out. How much are they going to improve from Jacksonville to this game against the Bears at home? And Travis Kelce also getting some more time. So, there's a lot of stuff going on right now where we're going to get some season-defining wins, right? And I'm going to pull up for you guys just real quick. Let's see the percentage of 0-3 teams to make NFL playoffs. I'm telling you, it's not high. What are the odds for an 0-3 team to make the playoffs? Making the playoffs nearly becomes impossible following an 0-3 start. Since expansion in 1979, only 6 teams have made the playoffs after an 0-3 start. The 2018 Houston Texans were the last team to accomplish the feat. The odds improve exponentially for teams that are able to win their third game. Okay? So what is this saying? If they go 0-3, the odds of them, there's only been 4 teams since 1979, right? But if you go 2-1 or 1-2, the odds will improve drastically. So that's what makes this third game a very, very big game for, playoff implications down the road. 6 teams have done it, right? And the NFL team started 0-4, make the playoffs. 1981 New York Jets, 1992 Chargers, the Bills, and 2018 Texans. Although they lost their first 4 games, the winning streak of the Chargers remained at 91.6% for the last 12 games of the season in 1992. So there are some teams that can get hot late and go on a winning streak. Is Denver capable of being one of those teams? I absolutely think so. If the defense can get back to how it was playing last year, and the jump that we saw from Russell Wilson in the offense from week 1 to week 2, that's trending in a way that I like, right? That game sucked because we lost, but at the end of the day, it was like, this one's on the defense. Now, we haven't said that in a while, right? So that, to me, that's going in the right direction. And this is the same defensive personnel that they should be able to get back to a better form. Okay. So if Denver is able to win in Miami and go 1-2, I see them turning their season around. If they go 0-3, they can still turn their season around. Honestly, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that many games. But I mean, Peyton Manning, people forget he started 1-3 going into week 5. And that team made the playoffs, right? That was actually a good team. That was the year that they lost in double overtime to the Ravens, and the Ravens end up being the Super Bowl winning team that year, and Denver should have won that game, right? And they started 1-3. So there's going to be some teams that are capable of getting it going. Just right off the bat, there's going to be some 0-3 teams that I don't know if they have the ability to do that. Houston is not going to be one of the 0-2 teams that turn their season around. The Chargers are one of the teams. All right. Now, here's the weird thing. After Sunday, either the Chargers or the Vikings are going to be 0-3. One of them, because they're playing each other. Okay. And then when it comes to undefeated teams playing each other, the Philadelphia Eagles and Tampa Bay is the only other matchup, right? Miami and Denver have complete opposites, 0-2 versus 2-0. Dallas, Arizona, 0-2 versus 2-0, right? So they're Arizona. I like Arizona in this game. I don't know if they'll win, but I expect them to cover. Arizona played a good game last week. Like they did go up against the Giants. I mean, this could turn into a blowout, but Arizona's looking for their first win, man. And when you're hungry for that first win, good things happen. The last meeting was January 2nd, 2022, and the Cardinals actually won 25-22, right? So they just played not that long ago. January 2nd, 2022. That is weird. Oh, that must have been a week 17 game last year. Dallas probably wasn't playing their starters. I wouldn't look into it too much, but still, Arizona, I'm going to see really quick on DraftKings what the spread is, because I think it's very possible that they can cover if it's what I expect it to be at, which is about 10 points. I would say 10 point home dogs. And here we go. 12. Yep, Arizona. 12 points. I would like that. I'll take Arizona at plus 12 to cover. And I gotta take a peek. And then Robert in the chat saying, how many teams do we have that are currently 0-2? All right. Well, we got the Houston Texans, 1, Denver Broncos, Chargers, Vikings, Patriots, Carolina, Arizona, Chicago, the Bengals. Okay, so we have 9 teams. So really quick, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give you my top most surprising 0-2 teams this far into the season. All right, number 1, I got to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals. You know what? It's actually not the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to tell you why. It's the Denver Broncos. And the reason is Denver, even in bad years, man, they win their home opening games. They are very good. The easiest part of their schedule was week 1 and week 2. Everybody, even people that expected Denver to be a 7-10 football team, said, okay, they're going to beat the Raiders and the Commanders, obviously, but then they're going to come back down to earth, when they play the Dolphins week 3. Nobody expected Sean Payton to lose his first 2 home games against mediocre football teams or slightly maybe average football teams. Nobody expected that. The Bengals have started slow the last 3 years, okay? And now Joe Burrow is actually listed as questionable for Monday night's game against the Rams with the calf strain, the same calf, right? So I think this is one of those situations where it's like, hey, he might have to miss 1 game and then, maybe we get him back fully healthy by week 4. But you definitely don't want to force him to play through an injury because clearly with an 0-2 start, something's not right. Okay. Number 3, I got the Chargers. Kellen Moore, one of the top offensive coordinators in the league, right? Coming over to the Chargers from Dallas. I expected the Chargers to be really good offensively, right? And right now it just seems like they're getting stuck playing really tough teams, and it's going to continue. I'm going to type right here ranking most surprising 0-2 team, just so people can keep up. All right. So I do have the Chargers in at number 3 is the most surprising 0-2 football team. And then the team that they're playing comes in at number 4, the Minnesota Vikings. I expected the Minnesota Vikings to not be terrible. Now, they were the team last year that won 12 games with a negative point differential. It's never happened ever in the NFL. But they did draft Jordan Addison. Kirk Cousins is still an above-average quarterback, and Brian Flores, former head coach of the Dolphins, took over at defensive coordinator. Now, they're limited with the talent that they have on that defense, but I didn't really see a reason to expect a huge regression. It's like, well, Minnesota won all of their close games. They won 12 games that were decided by 3 or fewer points. Like, there's no way they'll be able to repeat that. And my reply to that is, how do you know Minnesota's going to be in close games? They have a better defense. They were getting into shootouts last year. They had the worst pass defense in the NFL. So Brian Flores, I thought, would clean that up a little bit. It hasn't gone smoothly, the transition. Minnesota comes in at 0-2 and at number 4 on my top 10 most surprising 0-2 teams. Okay. And I got to say, I can tell you right off the bat, another team that I'm very, very surprised is 0-2. The Houston Texans. I'm just messing. No, I like the Texans, the Carolina Panthers. I believe the Carolina Panthers and the Texans wouldn't be that great. But I will say the Chicago Bears I'm going to put in at number 5. Not because I expected the Bears to be some kind of powerhouse, but because I thought that Justin Fields would have, a single win by now. The expectations were monster. Some people were crowning him MVP. I thought that was ridiculous, but it was happening. I believe Justin Fields would have a great year. I drafted him on my fantasy team. Well, we've already talked about it. Justin Fields is going to get out of his head and play with more instinct this week. But they're going against the Kansas City Chiefs on the road. This is kind of a season-defining game for Chicago. I know it's early, but if you can go into Kansas City in a game where Justin Fields told you publicly he's going to go back to his old style of playing football and get the win, this could be one of those things where it's like, okay, so there is a ceiling if Justin Fields plays well, but he hasn't done that yet in the first 2 weeks. Very important game for Chicago. And then probably by this time next week, this list is going to be cut in half, right? Denver's definitely going to beat the Dolphins. The Bears definitely going to beat the Chiefs. Carolina is going to beat Seattle. Like, I'm just kidding, but honestly, New England being 0-2, I'm going to put them in at number 6. New England Patriots. Bill Belichick's just not an 0-2 guy. He's not. He's a 2-2 guy since Tom Brady left, but they're 0-2. And now they're playing the Jets with Zach Wilson at home. Zach Wilson trying to just get this team in playoff position so Aaron Rodgers can deliver on his subliminal messages that he said on the Pat McAfee show that he may be ready for some football come postseason and that my recovery may surprise a lot of people. But then he wouldn't say it, physically he did not say it because he said that wouldn't be fair to put that pressure on him. But he also said it anyway. So, it's like he already did say it without saying it. But does he even need to say it? The whole point is the only way to see what he's really saying is for the Jets to go into the postseason so we can see if Aaron Rodgers is able to do what he didn't say he would. Oh, man, that was awesome. That's definitely getting clipped and turned into a short. And then Robert said, in week 1, before any games played, I asked you what team from the bottom 10 were most likely to have a Cinderella season. You called out Washington Commanders as maybe having the best chance. 2-0. Own it. You called it. Yeah, man. I remember I actually did a whole episode about the Commanders being a dark horse team with that defensive front. And I'm telling you, they have a good quarterback. I'm blanking on his name right now because, that's just, he's not that well known of a guy. Sam Howell, man, he led that team to an 18-point comeback. Doesn't he just kind of remind you of Kirk Cousins a little bit? I mean, to me, he does. The expectations were very, very low. New ownership coming in. Eric Bieniemy, nobody really had ties to him. He's a 6th-round draft pick. And then all of a sudden, we saw him in the preseason, and he's lighting up, and he's slinging the ball, and he's looking good. And there's a poll on Twitter. Who would you rather have, Commander fans, Patrick Mahomes or Sam Howell? And 88% of the Commander fans put Sam Howell. Not because they're telling you the truth, but because they got Sam Howell's back. They believe in him. And so far, Sam Howell is playing like he's backed by his city. You go down 18 points on the road, and you're playing, a tough defense, a defense that only gave you 3 points pretty much in all of the first half, and you lead your team to an 18-point comeback by taking shots. Sam Howell, dude, he wasn't just distributing 10-yard passes, button hooks. He was taking shots. He was throwing it 50 yards downfield to Terry McLaurin. He was throwing it between defenders in the back of the end zone. The play, Kareem Jackson. He was out there, and he looked in the second half. He looked like he looked like Russell Wilson in the first half, maybe even better. Okay, so and look, Denver just defensively did not play well, so I don't want to overreact to it, but you gotta keep in mind this game that just happened, because Sam Howell may be like a Kirk Cousins type story, and it just happens to be. By the way, Eric Bieniemy leaving Kansas City as the offensive coordinator, because he was never going to get credit for Patrick Mahomes' development as long as Andy Reid was there. No one was ever going to be like, oh, Eric Bieniemy is the genius behind the Mahomes Andy Reid relationship. They're just not. So Eric Bieniemy understanding for his personal journey to get to a head coaching position, he would need to play for a quarterback not named Patrick Mahomes and be on a staff not named Andy Reid. The Commanders was the perfect place, and Sam Howell was the perfect quarterback because nobody expected Sam Howell to be good, right? And I mean, some people did, but as far as like who's carrying who, is Belichick carrying Brady or is Brady carrying Belichick? As far as that whole quarterback conversation, nobody was going to be like, oh no, Sam Howell's the reason Eric Bieniemy looks good, if you get what I'm saying. So because of that, I think this is the perfect situation right now for Eric Bieniemy. He did not waver when they were down. He kept calling plays. He rolled the dice. He had Denver on their toes. We didn't know what was going on. Eric Bieniemy called a very good game. And I think part of that is Eric Bieniemy being with the Chiefs for as long as he was, playing Denver twice a year. Eric Bieniemy knows where Denver's vulnerable. He knows how to attack this team. This was not his first rodeo, as they would say, the boys in the kitchen. So look, I think that is probably one of the most surprising, not 2-0 teams, but just how well Sam Howell and Eric Bieniemy are starting to play together. Even for somebody like me that had the Commanders, being a dark horse playoff team, I'm still a little surprised on how good they looked in that second half. Now, I got Robert right here. He goes, what does Washington's schedule look like? So here you go. This is the Washington Commanders schedule. They've played Arizona. They've played Denver. They got 2 dubs. This week, playing Buffalo. Okay? So this is going to be a very tough game against Buffalo. This is not going to be easy. And Buffalo, by the way, beating the living crap out of the Raiders, but then, losing to Zach Wilson and the Jets. Buffalo is kind of like a tale of 2 halves, but 2 games, right? Who are the real Buffalo Bills and who are the real Washington Commanders? Because if Arizona and Denver are going to be, the 2 of the top 5 worst teams in the NFL, then maybe we should chill. Maybe it was the Commanders that should have looked at their schedule and saw Denver week 2 and said that's a win. Maybe it wasn't Denver fans that saw the Commanders and thought they had an easy win. Maybe these just aren't that great of teams, okay? And then Buffalo, okay? If they can go into Buffalo and beat Buffalo, the narrative will not be that, the Commanders are an amazing football team. Now, people will talk about it, but a lot of people are going to be like, what's wrong with Buffalo? There may not be anything wrong with Buffalo if the Commanders are good. Defensively, they are a really good team. Now, this is a huge challenge. I expect Buffalo to win. But even if the Commanders can keep this game within 3 points, I think that is a huge win for the Commanders. It shows that they can be good. They have the potential. So right now on DraftKings, for that specific game, let's see what the spread is. Commanders Bills. It's at 6.5. So the Commanders are 6.5 point dogs on the road. And honestly, that's not that much. You're saying Buffalo, you don't even trust Buffalo to win this game by a single touchdown. So this is going to be a really, really interesting game that is going to tell us a lot about Buffalo and the Commanders. Going through their schedule after Buffalo, and now I'll just roll right through it. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not an easy schedule being in the NFC East. They got Buffalo, then they play Philly. Okay, so they could be 2-2, and everyone's going to give up on Washington. But then hold on, they play Chicago, Atlanta, New York. Okay, so they could get back to slightly above 500. I'm telling you, this team in the NFC, a weak NFC, this is a team that could go 9-8, 9-8, and be the last wild card team. So New York, Philadelphia, New England, Seattle, New York again, Dallas, Miami. There's definitely some L's in here. Then they got a bye week, week 14. So a late bye. Um, you don't love to see a late bye, but it is what it is. Then they got the Rams, the Jets, the Niners, and then the Cowboys. Right? That's it. So if this team continues to, I mean, look, they do have a tough schedule, but if they can win the games that are winnable, they will end up at 9-8. If they can beat Chicago, if they can beat Atlanta, if they can beat the Giants, one of the two times, if they can beat, the Jets, I mean, they're gonna have to. Now that we've gone through the schedule, I'll be real with you. I take it back. It's gonna have to be a little more than just winning the games you're supposed to win. They're gonna have to win some games like Philly, um, Dallas, Miami, San Francisco. They're gonna have to win a game that actually counts. But look, I mean, what's the point of going to the playoffs if you can't beat a team like that anyway? So here we go. I mean, I'm excited to see this Buffalo game and see if the Commanders are ready for the challenge and if Eric Bieniemy's ready for the challenge, going against that Buffalo defense. And Von Miller, he'll be back in a couple weeks. And let me just double check that there's no Von Miller news. So it says Von Miller posts a promising update and that he's close to his return. Of course. Okay. So Banged Up Bills on Twitter tweeted out Von Miller's rehab update. Working on bending the edge and changing directions upfield. He loads and gets a lot of explosion off right knee. I don't see any extra steps in turning to change direction. Very fluid. First is regular speed, second is 1/4 speed. All looks really good. Okay. So, of course, Miller's return is still a couple weeks away. At least the earliest he can return is week 5 against the Jaguars. And as banged up Bills noted, he's not quite 100%. That said, Miller's getting to the point where he can make cuts effectively is great news. ACL tears are difficult for any player to come back from, especially Miller's age of 34. Von Miller might be the oldest 34-year-old guy in the league. So him returning all should be celebrated. So far, the Bills' pass rush has been a tad underwhelming with just 3 sacks through 2 games. Yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, Von Miller will, make this defense better immediately when he gets back. But he may be on a snap count for a couple of weeks. But by the time we're playing meaningful football, like the Bills are not going to do it. Like, honestly, Buffalo the year before, right? They were like, okay, let's bring in Von Miller. And during the playoffs, he's going to be our player to get us over the edge. And we heard all season, oh, they're going to snap count Von Miller, just throw him in on third down so, he can disrupt the game, but we can guarantee he stays healthy. Well, Buffalo definitely learned their lesson because it seemed like after week 2, Von Miller was playing 99% of the snaps and he was not on a snap count. So I'm really interested to see if Buffalo, I mean, if Von Miller says he's ready to go, I think there's a huge chance that Von Miller straight up just comes in for a couple plays, per series, and they're very conservative with how they use him because this is a Buffalo team that believes they're in a Super Bowl window and can win a Super Bowl, but they're going to need Von Miller just like the Rams needed him at the end of the season, not necessarily during the regular season. Von Miller has a new girlfriend. Her name is Megan Denise D-Nice. On Tuesday, the 31-year-old posted several images of his new girlfriend on his Instagram story. So Von Miller with a new girlfriend. That wasn't even supposed to be part of the episode today, but I had to do it. So more news. The Cam Akers thing I found really surprising. Cam Akers getting traded. Now, if you've had Alexander Madison in your fantasy leagues, you know that it hasn't gone very well. Alexander Madison has not been impressive. Okay, so I'm really, really, really interested to see how this whole thing plays out with Minnesota because did Alexander Madison averaged 23, 24 fantasy points before week 1, right before the season started when he was filling in for Dalvin Cook in previous seasons. So all we knew that Alexander Madison, if we knew that he was capable, right? Minnesota wouldn't have parted from Dalvin Cook. But when you're 0-2, something's got to change. Somebody's got to do something, right? So Cam Akers goes to Minnesota, and I'm interested to see how is he going to be used. How is Alexander Madison going to play 50% snaps immediately? I think it's a good move for Minnesota. It shows that they're not willing to just roll over and accept that their season's over. Hey, let's just bring in a player, a couple more players that we really believe in. Can we get Cam Akers? I like to see these kind of moves early in the season. Let's not wait till we're 1-6 and the trade deadline's week 8. Let's go ahead and fight for our life before we get too close or too far down that road. So it's a great move. And then for the Rams, they're able to add some value. So I'll go through the specifics of the trade. The Rams and Cam Akers are parting ways. The Raiders agreed to send him to Minnesota. Tom Pelissero reported today the Vikings will send a conditional 2026 sixth-round pick to the Rams in exchange for Cam Akers and a conditional 2026 seventh-round pick, the team announced later. So this is, I don't see these that much where you get picks, but it's 3 years down the road. Let's see if they elaborate on what the condition is. So LA decided to keep Akers, welcoming him back to the team following the trade deadline. He went on to post some of the best games of his career down the stretch in 22. But failed to sustain that momentum through 2023. Backup Kyron Williams outperformed Akers in LA season opening win over Seattle. And with Akers sensing he would lose snaps to Williams in weeks ahead, a chasm developed between coach and Sean McVay's staff and the running back. McVay decided to play week 2 without Akers, making him a healthy scratch for the Rams' eventual loss to the 49ers, but sealing all his fate in LA. Akers heads to Minnesota in hopes of finding a more prominent role in Kevin O'Connell's offense. And you ready for my hot take? I got my hot take. We got Steve in the chat. He said, sorry, everyone. I was busy directing a porn set earlier. Things went a little longer than expected. You guys are ridiculous. What's going on, Steve? So this is my hot take for the day. Cam Akers is going to be very successful in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell. Remember, Minnesota hired Kevin O'Connell to go offensive, right? They left their defensive coach. I can see his face, but I can't remember his name. Not Brad Holmes. Brad Holmes is, let me see. Let me check really quick. They had a defensive, minded coach. So they're bringing Kevin O'Connell to go offensive. I think Cam Akers is going to be in a good place. And remember, last year they tried to trade him in the middle of the season. Cam Akers in the front office of LA, whatever has been going on between the Rams and Cam Akers, it's been a nightmare. So, even the decision to not play him week 2 because they got something weird is going on there. It might just be a personality issue. I don't know. But I'm telling you, this is going to be good for Cam Akers. A fresh start. A team that went to the playoffs last year. This is a good situation. We got Apex in the chat. He said, should I do this trade? I'm giving up Saquon and Sky Moore for Garrett Wilson, Rashad, and Algier. I have Bijan. I think I'm getting a steal easily, but I'm trying to get other opinions on it. All right, so you got Saquon. I'm giving Saquon and Sky Moore. You already have Bijan for Rashad and Algier. Immediate reaction is I would do it. Obviously, Saquon Barkley dealing with an injury. So I think that's a good move. it might be a good move on both parties because he may be just waiting for. I mean, here's the thing. I'm gonna be honest. The only reason I probably wouldn't do it is because you can always get another running back in RB2, right? Rashad White had one really good game. I understand that. But let's say you're in the playoffs and you're, week 12 getting ready for your first playoff game, and you got Saquon healthy again with Bijan Robinson, who right now is the number 4 running back in the league. All right, you put 2 top 5 running backs on your list. You don't want to be rolling the dice with Tyler Algier. Rashad White, to me, I would like to flex him because then, you reduce the how confident you need to be. Okay, is he going to put up an RB2 type of day, RB1? Not sure. We'll flex him. And then if he does, he just has massive upside. Okay, Sky Moore, I don't know how I feel about any of the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers. So I like you giving Sky Moore away, right? Because to me it's not huge value. But Garrett Wilson, Garrett Wilson, one of the top talents in the Garrett Wilson, one of the top receivers in the league. So I think straight up, if you're betting on Garrett Wilson with Zach Wilson, it's not the greatest situation. I would much rather have Saquon Barkley and Bijan going into the playoffs than a Zach Wilson led Jets team, hoping that Garrett Wilson and Rashad White kind of take over. And then Apex giving me some more context here. He says, I have James Conner as an RB3 right now, and my wide receivers are pretty poor. Devontae Smith or Devontae Adams, Godwin, and lost Deontay to IR. Okay, so you got James Conner as an RB3. If you got Devontae Smith, yeah, okay, so it's Devontae Smith. Well, Devontae Smith, I expect Devontae Smith to get it going, but now I'm understanding. Yeah, see, that's why I like the context. So I would do the trade in that case because then you can go ahead and start Devontae Smith with Garrett Wilson, and then you can make Rashad White your RB2 and Bijan Robinson your RB1, and then you'll have a decision to flex Algier or James Conner or Chris Godwin. The move I would make immediately is check to see if Nick Chubb is available. Nick Chubb signing today with the Cleveland Browns on a deal worth up to $4 million. I mean, a place that he's familiar with. Go ahead and check that, see if he's available. And then last week I made a clip saying to go get Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta in Detroit is having a massive role. If he's probably not available at this point, but that's some of the most recent waiver wire guys that I've been like, man, these guys could change your entire season. Just like DeAndre week because Kenneth Gainwell's coming back. I think when you are the player of the week, they almost have to play you 80% of the time. So fantasy football still not confident projection 10.4 points. I under 10 points. So that's something that we'll keep up with. So tomorrow I'm going to be doing a fantasy football directed towards fantasy football. We'll dive into fantasy football and then we'll do our predictions for this week 3 slot of football games and catch you up on any news that happens between now and then. Steve said, just think somewhere out there, some poor chap traded for Aaron Rodgers before the season started. Yep, and a lot of people were actually banking on Rodgers to have a top 10 QB. I know for my brother, he drafted him in as trade bait. So if he was going top 5, and we expected him to, so Yeah, it's just unfortunate. This kind of stuff happens every year. But yeah, if you guys are interested in getting more news, more football news, and following this podcast, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at FTBL1LYPBCAST, Football Only Pod, and you can follow my partner at And Now Rick, ANDNOWRICK. We'll be back at the end of this week. Remember, the Broncos and Bears are playing next week, and he's a big Bears fan, so it's almost perfect that he would come back for that game. So we'll be talking a little bit later. Thank you guys for tuning in. Um, if you guys enjoy this podcast, make sure that you always share it with your people, your coworkers, your friends, your family. We had over 50 people in on last Thursday night, 50 people. So channel's doing pretty well, continuing to grow, and that is thanks to you guys who have been putting in the time and, liking this and commenting, getting our algorithm up, retweeting videos. You guys, honestly, can't thank you guys enough. So that's gonna wrap it up for today's episode. I will see you guys tomorrow. In the meantime, go Broncos. See ya.